Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome once again to the Rec Poker Podcast. Our official sponsor, as always, is Running Aces Racetrack, Casino, and Hotel. And our other sponsors are Learn Pro Poker and Website AMP. In this Chats edition of our podcast, which is actually number 200, we have a chance to hang out with Chad Holloway from PokerNews. Really excited about that. But let's first introduce our panel tonight. My name is Steve Fredland. I go by Rec Poker Steve in our PokerStars home game. And Sammy Farha says, just play every hand. You can't miss them all, which I'm not sure I agree with or not. How about you, John?
I'm John Somsky, Poker Geek MN everywhere. And I have a quote from Benny Binion: trust everyone, but always cut the cards.
And I'm Rob Washam. I'm Radman50 on Twitter and at the home game. And Katie Lederer once said, the cardinal sin in poker is not playing dead cards. It is not miscalculating your odds. It's getting emotionally involved.
Very good. Well, a couple of quick things before we bring in Chad. One new thing, our home games, you guys know we keep expanding those things. There's too much demand for what we're doing there, but we are going to add a Friday morning at 5 a.m. Hold your breath. It's okay. 5 a.m. Central Time and a noon Central Time because we got all these folks in Australia and Europe that are saying, we want in. So it's open to anybody, but we are adding a 5 a.m. and a noon Central Standard Time home game. And also you can join the community for free at rec.poker. And if you want to go premium, use the code RECPOKER, get $10 off your first payment. So with that, let's bring him in, Chad Holloway. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Very excited. This is, as you mentioned, your 200th episode, so I feel honored to take part, and congratulations on that. That is no easy feat in the world of podcasting and shows. Yeah,
well, thank you. Well, I know we talked to your people, and we said, can we get Chad on? They said, well, once you have 200 under your belt, then he maybe will come on. So it was a long haul to get you here, but yeah, we're excited to have you. Now, let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk about your poker journey, but before we get into that, maybe there's a few people out there that don't know who you are. Our target audience are, a lot of bar league, home league players. They're like, who's this Chad guy? So let's first talk a little bit about what you do with PokerNews. What's your actual title and what's your role there, and what are some of the other things that you're involved with?
Sure. My official role right now is head of live reporting for North America. And so when there are live tournaments, which there aren't many now in the world that we're living in, but prior and soon after, when things get a little more normal, is poker tournaments happen all across the country, really all around the world. But whenever they're in the United States or Canada, I'm the guy who is coordinating with venues, with tours, and then sending reporters there to offer live updates or do stories, things like that. Now, I've worked for PokerNews for about a decade, with 3 years off to work for the MSPT, the Mid-States Poker Tour. And I started off, as just a reporter, worked my way up to a writer, and then just did some, news articles, things like that. And also do the podcast. I mean, I do quite a bit of different things, but officially I'm head of live reporting for North America.
Head of live reporting and 85 other things.
Yeah, that's about right. I co-host the podcast. I still do a lot of articles and writing. And just try to promote the brand when I can. Jumping on shows like this from time to time is always fun.
Yeah, and if you guys don't follow PokerNews, do it. You really should be. It's fantastic stuff. They have so much live reporting out there. Full disclosure, I've done some reporting for the MSPT as well, and so I've interacted with the PokerNews folks that are doing the reporting on site. They're fantastic. It's an amazing system that they have going on, so really encourage you guys, check it out if you want to stay plugged into the poker scene. And we'll talk a little bit about some of your articles, obviously, with some of the breaking news that's happened in the poker world. We'll touch on that a little bit later here. But let's talk a little bit about your poker journey personally. Like, okay, so you're from Wisconsin now. So did you guys just wager cheese, or how did this work for you guys? How did you get into the game to start with?
It wasn't cheese, but it was food is where it started. We used to play, me and my friends, we grew up in a small town here in Wisconsin with about 500 people. And so during the summer when there wasn't school, there wasn't much to do in a small town. There was one restaurant. So almost every day we would go to the restaurant and we would order a big plate of French fries, right? I still remember this. It came to $1.26. So we'd get $1, $2 from our grandma or our parents or what have you. And 3, 4, 5 of us would go buy a plate of French fries, get the deck of cards, and play 5-card draw. And that's really where it began for me. We kind of graduated into our teenage years, upping the stakes a bit, if you will, to quarters or cigarettes for some of them who smoked. I never did, but you could wager a quarter or cigarettes type of thing, and then turned into more from there. And eventually, when I got into college, I found some bar games, some local games in Madison, Wisconsin, and just kind of started playing and taking it a little more serious. And from there, I went to, my first casinos when I turned 21. Actually, when I turned 18, I crossed the border over into Minnesota, where you only had to be 18. So there were occasional trips there for about 3 years. Turned 21, finally could get into the Wisconsin casinos. But really didn't start taking things serious until 2007. I relocated to New Orleans, where I attended Tulane Law School for a bit, and ended up traveling down to Harrah's and playing there. And back then in 2007, if you knew a little bit about poker, you were going to win 9 times out of 10 when you visited the casino. It was just that much easier. There was 1 or 2 people at each table who knew what they were doing, and then the rest were just trying to get lucky. Whereas nowadays, it's 8 or 9 people at the table know what they're doing. Maybe one guy doesn't. Everyone's just gotten caught up to speed. But back then, I was doing quite well, ended up dropping out of law school, not knowing what I was going to do with my life. And in 2009, I got an internship with Bluff for the World Series of Poker. So that was my first trip out there. Just used my knack for writing. I did some writing in college and in law school, and turned that into a poker career, because after 2009, 2010 WSOP rolled around. PokerNews offered me just a freelance position, but I guess I impressed enough that I soon got hired on staff, and kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, it's such a cool story. I have a million stories kind of along the way. And let's start at Tulane. So doing the law school, looked like you were going to go down that road. Fill in the blanks a little bit for us. Was it sort of a, this isn't for me thing, or was it that poker was just such a draw, or, something else going on? So talk about that transition. Did you just kind of make the decision at that point, I'm going to pursue poker, or was it something different going on?
No, it really wasn't poker that drew me away from it. It was a combination of things. I never had a huge passion for law school. It was just, I was a history major. And so it was the logical step, I guess. I could maybe get into teaching or something, but I wanted a job that was going to pay well. And so I thought law school, and I did all right on my LSAT and got accepted to Tulane. And New Orleans was a world away almost from Wisconsin. It's straight up north, but north-south, but it's, the culture and everything couldn't be more different. And I really fell in love with it. And I still do love New Orleans quite a bit, but got into, doing the law school, taking the classes, and I was playing poker too much. I'd skip classes to go down. I'd take my law books with me, and I'd be studying at the table. I still do read at the table to this day. And just my grades slipped. I wasn't giving it 100% like I really needed to, and kind of just realized after a bit that, like, I'm not going to be able to bullshit my way through this, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been accustomed to kind of doing that in college and even high school. Like, it just was easy to kind of get through it. And I'm like, this is going to be a little bit different. You really need to commit to this. And are you sure you want to commit to this? And like I said, I just wasn't sure I wanted to go down that path. And so I ended up moving back to Wisconsin, really not knowing what I was going to do with my life. I knew I would be playing poker, but not as a profession. I didn't think I was going to make it. It was just kind of keep my head above water. And I didn't have a bankroll at the time. I was poor. If I could afford a $100 buy-in, that was it. And if I lost it, it was got to wait a couple more weeks to get paid.
Yeah, those are tough spots in life, right? We all have those spots where you kind of know this isn't what I want to do, but I don't necessarily know what's next. And so I'm sure that was a soul searching sort of period of time for you. So then Bluff Magazine thing.
I'll tell you this real quick. I shared this story a few times, but it's, this was, so when I moved back to Wisconsin, I took a job at a call center for Land's End, which is a clothing company. They send out their catalogs, people call in. And there are 3 different call centers throughout Wisconsin, each with a couple hundred operators. So maybe like 500-600 operators on any given shift. And I'd say 95 to 99% of them are women in their 50s or 60s. It's just kind of a side gig for them. I was in my 20s at the time, and it was really rare I think there were 2 guys in the entire building who were in their 20s answering phones. Well, I was going through this, this identity crisis, if you will. Is poker something that is for me? I've been on a downswing. Is it time to just give it up? I don't know what I want to do. I was, just starting to write about it and not really gaining much traction. And so as I'm thinking this, this is going through my head. One night I take a call at work. It's a gentleman, and I take his order. He's ordering some pants, and I go through it. After 10 minutes, we get to the end where I get to see his information. We're going to check him out. And I see the name. And as soon as I seen the name, the voice clicked in my head. It was Steve Dannenman. And I said, I hate to be unprofessional, but Steve Dannenman as, runner-up in the 2005 World Series of Poker main event, Steve Dannenman. And he kind of laughed, and he said, yeah, it was. And we chatted, and that was a big turning point for me because I thought to myself, of all the operators who randomly get assigned these calls, nobody in this entire company, nobody would know who Steve Dannenman is but me. And it would mean nothing to anybody, but it means a lot to me. So to me, it was like just a sign, like, okay, poker is for you. Keep going with this, keep playing. And, I went back to the casino and I hit a little upswing. My confidence was up, and here I am now. That was probably 12 years ago now, and making a career out of the poker world. I have a bracelet to my name too. So it was a life-changing call from Steve Dannenman of all people.
I love that, the butterfly effect, right?
Right.
Have you ever reached out to him again since and let him know about kind of that you ended up in the business?
Yeah, I have. I know Steve, fairly well now, getting to the position I'm in the poker world. And I don't remember where it was, if it was in Vegas or some other casino, but I had the opportunity to actually tell him that story. And he got a little kick out of it. And, I just said, you don't know it, but thank you for ordering that pair of pants.
Right, exactly. That's a great pair of pants. You should have him sign them and give them to you at some point. No, that's super cool. So Bluff Magazine, how does that come out? You just were you plugged in to the scene at that point? Were you looking? Did they reach out to you? Like, how did that whole internship piece start?
So at that time, I was just really trying to break into the poker world. I had reached out to all sorts of people in the community, people I read in magazines, Card Player Magazine, Bluff Magazine. They had bylines. Some of them had emails or what have you. So I just really started reaching out to anybody asking for advice. And I must have seen something in Bluff Magazine or somewhere. I mean, this was kind of before social media was too big, but somewhere I must have seen that they were looking for help for the 2009 World Series of Poker. So I applied or reached out. I had a little bit of a resume or portfolio at that point, and they offered me a position. It was paid, but it was also break even, right? Like by the time I travel out there, by the time I pay for food and find a place to stay, I was going to break even. But being the fanboy that I was, just looking for experiences, I thought, I'm going to do it, obviously. So I took out a loan from the bank here because I had zero money. I drove out to Vegas and interned them, wrote some of the tournaments and just experienced my first WSOP. I was a fanboy. I got pictures with, Doyle Brunson and Mike Matisow and all the people you had seen on TVs in the 2000s. I was wearing patches left and right. Like, I was just, to me, that was it. Like, I'm living my dream. Poker. I'm at the World Series of Poker. I'm not really playing anything. I can't afford to play anything, but after this is done, I get to go back home, and that's going to be it for me in poker. And now I'll get a real job, and I'll start, at that point, I think I had decided, like, all right, law school didn't work out, so I'm going to go to be a teacher. So that's what I did. Came back from the World Series of Poker, and I went back to college to get my teaching degree. And I took all the classes. I have all the credits, and, it was an accelerated program. And so in the beginning of 2010, I started student teaching. And so for 3 or 4 months, I went unpaid every day teaching 10th grade high school history and a few other high school classes. And the World Series was starting to roll around. And I thought, you know what, let me just see what's going on, if anybody's looking or what's out there. And the year before, I had met Mickey Doft, who has been in the industry a long time and worked for PokerNews at the time. I was with Bluff, and I learned about PokerNews. He told me about PokerNews, what PokerNews does with the live updates and what have you, and that they bring on people every summer. So I reached out to Mickey and just said, hey, are you guys doing updates again? Do you need help? He put me in touch with Gary Gates, who at the time worked for PokerNews, and people might know him as making the main event final table last year and finishing in 4th place. Well, long story short, I'll try to
no, it's good, man.
This down. Yeah, Gary Gates was leaving. and Matthew Parvis was coming into PokerNews. Well, as fate would have it, Matt Parvis had been editor-in-chief at Bluff Magazine. And so I had interned before. He brought me over to PokerNews. And like I said, I actually had to quit student teaching to go work the World Series of Poker, because the student teaching, the semester wasn't supposed to end until the very end of May. And the WSOP started a week prior. So there was a week overlap that I just couldn't get out of. My school would not have any leeway. They said, and so, I consulted with friends and family, and it was a huge choice. I had invested so much time and energy, and I was so close to getting that teaching degree, but here's my opportunity to go with PokerNews, who paid quite a bit more. It wasn't going to be a break even. It was going to actually profit.
Right. You could maybe pay the loan back. Yeah.
Right. And there was no guarantee of future employment, but I thought, you know what, I can always go back to student teaching and finish this off. But I ended up doing a good enough job that summer, I guess. I really loved what I did, and I tried to do my best, and I guess I made enough of a good impression, because shortly thereafter, Matt Parvis sent me an email asking if I wanted to go live report a tournament in Argentina. And for a small town Wisconsin fanboy to go down to Argentina and get paid to do it, it was a dream come true. And from there, just eventually I got hired on as staff. And from 2010 to 2016, I traveled the world for PokerNews doing live updates.
Let's talk a little bit about this. It's such an interesting story. It's a very compelling story. I mean, it's a long way from $1.26 French fries to live reporting in Argentina, right? And I mean, you've gone on to do even greater things since then. But talk a little bit about. It's a question I get quite a bit. Maybe you get this question, and we have a lot of people out there in Rec Poker Nation that sort of have this on their mind, like, man, it'd be so cool to work in the poker industry, like somehow, some way, shape, form. But I think what I hear in your story is. It is, but you had the passion, you had the self-confidence, you're willing to work for free, you were driven. I mean, it sounds like, things have to go your way, as luck would have it, as you said, but it's hard work, right? To kind of break into this industry if you're not already a known commodity. Maybe talk a little bit about, the perseverance that you had, or what would you say to people that are out there going, man, it'd be kind of fun to someday be a Chad Holloway or just be around the game as my living?
Sure. And I get asked this quite frequently, people reaching out on social media, and I tell them the same thing that people told me when I first reached out, asking how to break into the industry. And really, I was met with a lot of, don't do it, or it's hard, or, it's facing an uphill battle sort of thing. And it really is, because there are only a few positions, it is tough. It's very competitive. It's a niche market, but all that said, I knew all that, or I was told all that, and I still was able to do it. So it's possible. You can do it. You do have to be willing to work hard. You do have to be willing to maybe pay your dues a little bit, so to speak. And by that meaning, maybe you have to write for free for a little while, just so you build a portfolio. You have something to show, which in turn will get you a job, maybe doing live updates, and then you can, build from there. You're not going to start live updating, though, going from fresh off the streets to live reporting the $100,000 buy-in high rollers. That's for more experienced reporters. So then you got to start small. You got to, if it's, say, the WSOP, you're going to report the casino employees event. You're going to report the $500 buy-ins, the $1,000 buy-ins, no limit events that are kind of we'll call them like the low-hanging fruit of the WSOP. There's not as many eyes on the tournament like that as there is a big one for one drop. But if you do that and you come back the next summer, and then the next summer, you kind of work your way up in the industry, you get to know players, and you just kind of start establishing yourself as a poker reporter. And, along the way, you got to do things. You got to make sure you are staying on top of the news. I always encourage people to get your name out there, get a Twitter account, get on social media, start interacting with the players, with the tours, with the casinos, and just kind of make a name for yourself. And if you work freelance, which most reporters start off working freelance before they're ever able to get like a salaried position or a full-time position with a company, make those connections, network, and just make sure they know that you're there, that you're available, and kind of be willing to do whatever needs to be done and do it right. And realize, like most industries, success isn't going to come overnight. It might, if you're playing poker, you could win a tournament and boom,
right,
you have that success. But on the poker media side of things, it's definitely a long, patient grind. And It's great though. Once you do, like I said, I got paid to travel the world, seeing countries and things that it would have cost me a fortune to do on my own dime, but I got actually paid to do it. So I'm very lucky, very fortunate to have had the life I had in over the past decade.
I love that. Such a great message. And be on time and be responsible. Do the little things. I see so many people make those mistakes. Just do the obvious, and then then pursue it with passion. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was coming from. Is I think what makes you a great reporter and what makes people actually want to listen to you is your passion about the game. It really comes through in everything you do, that you actually care, you actually enjoy it. Not to mention the fact that you have achieved a few things that most people would give their left arm for in the poker playing world. And of course, I am talking about when you won your bracelet at the in the employees event. What was that like? I mean, I remember listening to podcasts after that, and everyone was so happy for you because you do know so many people in the poker industry that, other people on other podcasts were saying, hey, yeah, Chad, he's a great guy, and he won the event. It was a great thing. But what did that mean to you?
I mean, winning a bracelet as a poker fan is the ultimate dream. So it meant a lot. I had always hoped to compete for one, and it kind of came out of nowhere, if you will. Like, I thought I was going to maybe win a circuit ring at first, and then kind of work my way up, if you will. And that year for 2013, we were contracted by Caesars to do the live updates. And so they considered us employees, and they let us know, as, since you're going to be employees for the summer, you are eligible to play the casino employees event. I hadn't planned on playing it. Most people hadn't. We found out like a week before that we could. And so I'll never forget, I was down in New Orleans, not living there at the time, but back there for the WSOP National Championship. The Circuit National Championship was held there that year. And they had a player party. And as the player party was on a steamboat, a riverboat that was on the Mississippi. And so they took us out for a spin for 3 or 4 hours. Everyone was drinking, having fun. And I was talking to Nancy Birnbaum, who is a Florida pro I knew from the circuit quite well. She said, are you going to play anything this summer? And I said, well, they told us we could play this casino employees event, so I think I'm going to give that a whirl. And she said, well, how much is that? I said, it's 500. And, at the time I had a little bit of a bankroll and stuff. 500 was fine. It was about the sort of tournaments that I could play. And so I was planning on playing it, but she said, 500, you want me to put you in? And I said,
Oh, you cut out there, Chad. Chad, you're on mute right now. No, unless the dog triggered something. I don't know. Can you guys hear Chad at all? No. There we go. Now we're back live.
how about now, though?
Yep, we're good now.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, my dogs were going a little nuts.
No, it's all right. We heard Nancy ask you how much it was, and then
again.
became a mystery. What's that, Rob?
You can hear me still?
Yep, we're good. Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So Nancy Birnbaum asked me how much the buy-in is. I said 500. She says, do you want me to put you in? And I was, probably going to say no if she said, an 80-20 split or something like that, which is kind of a standard backing deal. But she said 50-50. And I said, yep, sure. Like anybody, will tell you that that's a pretty good deal. They're paying the whole buy-in, and all you have to do is play. And if you lose, you're not out anything. And well, long story short, 898 runners. I ended up winning it and won it for about $85,000. So, I had half my action. I've been very transparent about that sort of thing. And it was a whirlwind. It was only a 2-day event, and the structure back then was quite a bit of a turbo. And it was just one of those things. Like, I made day 2, third in chips, but we were still coming back with, I want to say, 52 players. So even sitting third in chips with 52 players, you still are like, well, this is cool, but
Right.
It's still so far away. You don't fly in friends and family for,
Right.
and then in the cash at that, it was only, I don't know, $1,200 or something. We were just barely in the money. But so I returned to day 2 and just pick up where I left off and start amassing chips. And it was such a whirlwind because all I got were, the breaks, the 15-minute breaks every 2 hours or whatever it might have been. I didn't have a lot of time to let my family and friends know. Fortunately, it was being live reported on PokerNews and what have you. And I did have some other friends like spreading the word, but it was a long day too, 13 hours or something like that. I was exhausted, but, ended up winning it. And fortunately what my Wisconsin family and friends weren't there. My poker colleagues and friends were. So that was kind of cool to have them there cheering and celebrating with me.
So cool. Unbelievable story. So I'm curious a little bit about, back to the reporting side of things. And now you've covered all of these people for all of these years. I'm curious, who are some of the favorites? I'm not going to call you out for the one favorite necessarily, unless you want, but are there a few people that you're like, man, I hope they're playing this event, or they're just fun to cover, or, they treat the media really well, whoever it is, like, who are those folks that are people that you're excited to be around?
Well, the one I was always really excited because he was one of the reasons I fell in love with poker in the first place was, and unfortunately he's passed away a few years ago, was David Elliott, the Devilfish. Right? I always remember seeing him on the WPT dressed up to the nines with his knuckle dusters on that said devil and fish. I just love the character. So he is one of them that just really made me fall in love with the game. Not the greatest person per se, but he was a great character, and I love the character of the game.
A good one to cover.
Yeah, exactly. And he was always fun, very entertaining. So he was always up there for many, many years. Being a Wisconsin guy, I like Phil Hellmuth. I really, he's very polarizing. He's a character too. I know him pretty well. I played with a lot of the same people he played with when he lived in Wisconsin. So I'm always a big fan of Phil, and I've been fortunate enough to live report 3 or 4 of his last Bracelet wins, which has been pretty incredible. There are some guys out there like an Anthony Zeno, who's won several bracelets, WPTs. Anthony Zeno is just one of the nicest guys out there. They really respect what the media does, the attention that they give, and then really like the long, thankless hours that live reporters work, because they're there from start to finish, even a little before, a little after. And, a lot of the times players are coming down criticizing them. Oh, you got this hand wrong. I didn't check. I check called, or I checked, like details. And they just don't appreciate that a reporter is working 12 hours a day, 6 hours or 6 days a week. And they're going to make those little mistakes, and they're not really that bad. Players like Anthony Zeno do realize it and, are appreciative. Maybe they'll come in one day with some, candy or some food just to say thank you. Or once Danielle Anderson, a Minnesota girl, Danielle Moon Anderson came in. She handed me a gift certificate, a gift card for a local place in Vegas that gives massages, and said, you've been working really hard all summer long. When you get an hour, go down here and, get a massage for yourself. And that was really cool, really appreciated, of course. And I actually did end up using that card this past summer, which was great.
Well, yeah, and I mentioned, I've done some reporting with the MSPT and stuff, and they are long days. If you guys are out there playing, if you have reporters, thank them because it is a long day and you're on your feet most of it, or a good chunk of it, which can be exhausting, can be hard on the back once you get into day 4, day 5, and that sort of thing. So I got a lot of respect for what you guys do week in and week out, and the team that you've managed to build, building a great team there too. Let's shift focus a little bit specifically then on Mike Sexton. So the news just came out. We're recording this on September 7th, and the news just came out that Mike has passed away. And you did a phenomenal article on that, and I've seen a number of tributes, of course, from poker players, from the media, from all around the world, of course, for Mike. So I'd love to have you share a little bit about your experience with Mike, maybe some of your favorite memories, or what you want to share with the Rec Poker Nation.
Sure. Give quick credit to Mo Nuara and Matthew Pitt. They also contributed to that article, doing a lot of research on Mike and his accomplishments. Like so many others, we were really shocked and surprised, by when news broke that he was ill and that things weren't looking good, and that it was kind of just a matter of time. And then, of course, yesterday word broke that he did pass away, surrounded by his family. And I too have been enjoying everybody's stories, and Mike was one of the, if not the nicest guy in poker. I will say he's the greatest ambassador poker has ever seen. I've never seen him say no to a fan. I've never seen him get grouchy. If he ever was impatient or not having that passion for poker. He was doing it behind closed doors, because when he was out among the fans, among his fellow players, he was nothing but a gentleman and, just like I said, a great ambassador. And I always felt a nice kinship with him because, like me, he works in the poker industry, but he also plays and he enjoys playing, you know? So he always said, I was just watching an old interview of his earlier today where he said, you know, he always thinks of himself as a player first and a commentator second, even though everybody knew him more as a WPT commentator for all those years. And I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I consider myself a player first, but most people know me because of what I do, you know, in the poker media and with PokerNews and at the time, one time MSPT. So I've always kind of had that kind of kinship or understanding with Mike. And some of my favorite memories are, I worked one WPT event a number of years ago. This must have been 2016, I think. And I had never worked a WPT event for them, for the WPT, because I had always been PokerNews. And at the time I was MSPT. But MSPT, when they didn't have anything going on, they would allow me to do some freelance work. So it just so happened that this WPT at Playground Poker Club in Canada was having an event that I could work. And so they gave me a shot. They hired me on. And where we were staying was in Montreal, and it was about a 30-minute one-way ride to the venue. So every day we would get up, we'd all pile in the van and go to the venue. And then at night, same thing. We'd all get in the van and go back. And Mike Sexton was in said van. You know, he was the WPT. The WPT really is a family. And it may have only been for this one event, but I was part of that family for that one event. And they welcomed me. Mike welcomed me. And it was very special. You know, he was in the van. He was, like I said, when he came down from his hotel room, he was dressed in his suit and he was ready to go. Like he had a job to do. He was going to be an ambassador. He was going to greet the players. And from the moment he got down to the hotel lobby, that's what he did. And he was kind enough to entertain me with, you know, when I asked some questions on the rides to and from the casino and the hotel, he would, you know, be very open and shared a lot of stories. You know, I'm a big poker historian, if you will, and I knew that he was very close to Stu Unger back in the day. And so for him just to share a little bit about his experiences with Stu Unger, and you know, he's been around for 50 years in the poker world, and it's incredible. He knew everybody, and just getting to listen to those stories was great. And then in, you know, outside of that particular event, I would always see him at the World Series of Poker, would always say hi. He was always nice. He always had time for everyone, not just fellow big name players, not just the poker media. Even if you were a fan passing him in the hall and said, hey, do you mind if I get a photo? He's not only going to stop and take that photo with you, he was going to have a conversation with you. And, you know, if it was a good conversation and you seen him next year, he's the sort of guy that would remember you. And I think that's just why he was so universally beloved. He had a passion for the game. Like John said, you know, having a passion really shines through, and it really will help you rise in this poker world. And Mike Sexton had a passion for poker even before the poker boom. You know, he had a lot of ideas that might have seemed crazy at the time, like the Tournament of Champions, but that came to fruition. And you know, he's in the Poker Hall of Fame class of 2009. He was the only person inducted that year, and I think that's kind of fitting because he does stand alone in his contributions to poker, if you will. And I don't know, I'll always cherish those rides that I had just described with you with Mike. And then one that just sticks out in my mind a little bit too. This is nothing special, but it is really, I think maybe the last time I seen Mike was last year at the World Series of Poker. Party Poker had a party. I was under the impression that it was going to be a dinner party. So me and my PokerNews colleague, we got the invite and we went over to, it was at Caesars at some restaurant. And we just thought we were going to eat. And then, you know, an hour or two later, we would go back to work. Well, we get to this restaurant, which had been basically cleared out and reserved. And long story short, it wasn't just a dinner. It was this huge party, you know, open bar, hors d'oeuvres, hundreds of people. It was just this. I've been going to Vegas for the World Series of Poker for over a decade. This was the best party I've ever been to. It was great. It was a lot of fun. Anyways, at the end of the night, they closed down where the party was being held, and we learned that there is an after party at one of the suites. And we got invited, so of course we go up there. And we get off the elevator, and the first person I seen was Mike Sexton, and he was kind of sitting on a ledge of a fountain and just all by himself, kind of. And I went up and I said, "Oh, hey, Mike, how you doing? How you been?" And he quick turned it on, like you said, like he does. He's on. He's like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" He looked up, and I'm like, how do I say this? Mike Sexton had a fun night that night. He was he had a few drinks, and I'm like, okay, this is why he's sitting by himself. He just is taking a little time. And I just remembered, I was just so impressed, like, because it was late. We had been staying up, and I'm like, I guess this was last year. He must have been 71, and he was there staying up with all the young guns, if you will, of poker and the party poker people. Like, he was going to be there to be the ambassador, to do the job, to rub elbows with his, friends, colleagues, and the fans. And I don't know, that one sticks out in my mind because it's just, he just always was go, go, go. And, he certainly was there.
Well, if you're just listening to this podcast, you don't see Chad smile as he's telling these stories. So it's fun to see the life in you as you're recounting these stories with Mike. It's fantastic. I mean, I wish, I'm jealous of anybody that got to know the guy, because I think there's those larger than life people out there. And what I sense is, in all of the stories that I hear, it's all authentic, sort of genuine response to him. I mean, frankly, when some people die, everybody's trying to say the best thing they can about the person. And I think sometimes it feels forced, frankly. With Mike, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like he genuinely was the real deal, and he's going to be missed.
I've been around the industry a long time. I've gotten to know a lot of people. I hear things about players, right? Like their public versus their private personas, or things they might have done that haven't come to light to the larger masses. And I can honestly say, without a doubt, I've never heard anything bad about Mike Sexton. And as far as I know, I haven't seen anybody else saying that they have either on social media or things like that. Yeah. It's just so unique to the poker world to have somebody like that who is just so respected and beloved, and with nothing bad, no blemishes on their records that
right.
Seem to be there. Even with there's some pros who are associated with online poker sites who, because of what happened with the online sites, they got blemished a little bit. Mike Sexton was with Party Poker, who pulled out of the market, who did the kind of the right thing, and it's just almost fitting. That's just who he was. He was just a shining light in the poker world, and I'm very, very sad that he's gone, but that the light from it, or just his mark on the industry, is going to be felt for such a long, long time.
Well, and you hope people are going to see that. They're going to go in. Hopefully that's going to inspire the next round of leaders to say, I want that to be my legacy. Maybe I've made mistakes or whatever, but I want to actually aspire to be remembered like this when I pass. So hopefully that will inspire the next generation. And you mentioned, as a player, and I knew he was a player. I knew he had some success, but I didn't realize this until I started reading your article and then doing a little research. $6.7 million in tournament earnings, World Series of Poker bracelet, WPT title. I mean, this is the real deal. So, it's not just some ambassador that was there because of his good looks and his eloquence. He was a very legitimate player. Did you ever have a chance to play with him at all?
I don't think I ever had a chance to play with him, unfortunately. Trying to recall, there may have been like a charity event or two. It certainly wouldn't have been at a big tournament or anything like that. I do remember one time when he was more of a player, if you will. Like, of course he was a player. He won a bracelet. He won a WPT. But the time he stepped up to poker's biggest stage, if you will, was the first ever 2012 big $1 million buy-in, big one for one drop. And we were kind of surprised, like, wow, Mike Sexton is putting up $1 million. And,
right.
Of course he had backers or the right friends and things like that. And he was pretty clear about that, but he went, and the intensity that he had and how serious he was taking that. And he ended up cashing in 9th place. It was his largest ever career score, and I know that one meant a lot to him. That score meant a lot, that he was able to go up against, some of the young Germans and a lot of the young players and still represent the old school. He used to talk a lot about the old school because that's what he's from. Like I said, he was with Stu Unger and those guys back in the day. And so that was one of my favorite moments. I was there. I witnessed it happen. I wasn't there when he won his bracelet in, I think it was 1988 or 89. I wasn't there when he won his WPT. So to actually be there, that was one of my favorite Mike Sexton moments, is, as him as a player.
Well, just so much respect coming out of it. You mentioned the old school, and he'd talk about that, like, part of the old school, but he had so much respect for these young guns, the math wizards. I mean, he wouldn't be like throwing them under the bus like, oh, these young, he'd just say, man, they're good players. And so I just felt like that's sort of what he represented as well, was just respect each other. Maybe he had his perspectives on different things, but teaming with respect. So as we start to wrap up here, Chad, kind of what's next for you now? What's next for Poker News? What's next for you? Obviously, we're all waiting to be able to play live poker, or have it at least be commonplace again. And I'm sure you are, as much as anybody, going, let's go, let's get this thing going. But what's kind of next for you in Poker News?
Sure. So fortunately, live poker has been more or less non-existent for the past 6 months. A result we see was a boom in online poker, right? So fortunately for myself and a lot of others within the company, we've been able to transition to just covering more online stuff, more online content, and things like that. So fortunately, we've been able to keep a job and keep working and keep busy. So that's been great. What's next, I'm hoping, is that we start to see live poker start returning. I actually seen it last weekend. I went to the Mid-States Poker Tour, the MSPT, in Grand Falls. It was the first mid-major live tournament in about 6 months, and
they crushed it.
They crushed it. Yeah,
people were hungry.
Yeah, when I worked for the tour, that was always the baby stop, like the small stop. Like, we're going to get out of here early because the field's going to be small. I think the record was 234 in
500 something, didn't they?
Yeah, 517 this time. And so obviously there's a hunger for live poker. I am hearing rumblings of certain venues or tours who are trying to make things happen yet this year. I think it'll be more likely in early 2021 that we start to see some more movement and some of these things start to come back. And then hopefully, I know the WSOP is still holding out hope that maybe there'll be a live version in 2020. I'm thinking like 2021. Hopefully things are back to normal by that point. But like you said, we're just kind of all just waiting to see. I do think that MSPT happening and the numbers that they got have given a jolt of energy to tours and casinos to see if they can find ways to also start bringing live poker back. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, you sort of have this there's a whole bunch of us that are wary of playing. But that doesn't make out for then, if there's very few tournaments, anybody that wants to play is going to go there. So there's sort of that they're trying to figure out, like, how do we balance that? And clearly it was a good decision for them, hopefully with the turnout. But yeah, it might motivate others to do some tournaments as well. John, what did you have?
Oh, I just wanted to mention I was sorry to see the LFG podcast go to the sidelights. I always enjoyed hearing you and Jamie Kerstetter cover that, and it's really the only one that ever covered the mid-major kind of tour circuit. But I'm at least glad to hear that you're on the Poker News podcast, so we still get our Chad Holloway fix.
I appreciate it, John. It's kind words. We had a great time doing that podcast for, it was a solid 2-year run, and it was no reason other than kind of just a business decision. They wanted to downsize the number of podcasts that they were supporting, really focus on just the one. We really did enjoy, though, focusing on the mid-majors. I still have a big love for the mid-majors. When I worked for the MSPT, they're a mid-major tour. I'm a mid-major player. I'm not going to be playing high rollers or anything like that. I'm going to be playing those $1,500, those $1,100 type of buy-ins while taking the occasional shot. So I'm still going to do my best to give some love to the mid-majors via the Poker News podcast or via articles on Poker News and things like that. And of course, Jamie is also doing great things now with Marley Cordiero on their own podcast, The Rake. And, me and Jamie, I'm sure, will reunite at some point for something down the road.
Yeah, good. That's so good. So as we wrap up now, I guess I challenge you to what words do you have for our rec poker players out there? So we've talked a lot about the industry. We've talked about, maybe getting into the industry if it's something of interest, but we talked about your experience with PokerNews, but we haven't even touched on you as a player really, other than the bracelet. Obviously you could bring a lot to the table strategy wise for our folks. So I'm curious, as you have players out there that are playing home games, they're playing bar leagues, they're playing these small buy-in tournaments, and they're going, man, I don't know if I'll be able to become a pro or not, but I want to keep moving up in stakes. I want to get better at this game. What advice do you have for them as players to advance through the rankings?
It's interesting, this game of poker, as I talked about, like 2007, the game is so different even, in 13 years.
I feel like I got screwed. I missed out on that. I didn't start playing until like 2010, and everybody's saying It used to be so easy. I'm like, it's not easy, especially for me.
I actually had the opportunity, Jonathan Little, who is a well-respected player and poker coach and author, he asked me to do a chapter in his book, Excelling at No Limit Hold'em. This was a few years ago now, and he asked, to just do a pitch. What would you like to write about? And he was getting some big name players with much more impressive resumes than me. I'm like, do people really want to hear too much strategy from me when they could be reading it from
Alex Fitzgerald?
Exactly. And so, but I said, what I do have is I have been around for a while. I do know the history of the game, and I've had a front row view to the evolution of the game just from being a live reporter, let alone a player. And so I said, here's what I'd like to write about. I would like to write about how poker has changed from 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7 to now, and the sort of things that we've seen back then, like when somebody would raise pre-flop, they would raise 3 times the big blind, whereas now you hardly ever see that, and it's almost min raise or 1.2 opens, and just little nuances like that. And so he said, sure, go for it. And I was honored because he decided to lead his book with that chapter. It's chapter 1 in the book. I didn't know that would be the case at the time, but he said it really sets a good tone for strategy talk and the evolution. And then this leads into my answer to your question is always be looking to evolve your game, right? The game is going to change. If you learn to be the best poker player right now, today, in 2 years' time, if you don't continue to study, if you don't continue to improve, you are going to be outdated. You're no longer going to be the top poker pro. And that's why we see a lot of these players that were the top poker pros during the poker boom years, while they still may be famous, we still know them, they still have name recognition, they don't have the success, they don't have the results, they don't have the money that a lot of these other young up-and-comers who are doing a lot of studying, who are currently looking to improve their game, do. And so I'm not saying you have to study as much as those guys. You don't have to use solvers and things like that. I don't even use that stuff. I know what they are. You should at least know what they are, kind of how they work, but it doesn't mean you have to be, using it as much as them. It's just being aware of how the game is changing and then adapting accordingly. Know what ranges mean. Know what, even if it's more simple, know what a continuation bet is, delayed continuation bet, and get familiar with the terminology and realize it. Because once you know it, then when you're playing, you start to see it, and you can either adapt to it. You can start, putting it into your own repertoire of moves that you might make. It took me a while to learn that, because when I won my bracelet in 2013, I thought I was great, right? And who doesn't? You just want a bracelet.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was hoping to follow it up with something, but I really didn't have a whole lot of success in the years to come. And that's because I was playing the same old game. And it was only until a couple of years ago where I said, all right, I'm going to start changing it up a little bit, where I started kind of having success again. And it's still something I'm doing to this day. It's harder now because I don't get to play as much as, with what's going on. In fact, I'm in the middle of the longest break of poker playing I've ever had. So I'm hoping that when I do get back to the tables, it'll be, I'm ready and roaring to go. I can feel it. I've got the itch. I've got the passion. I want to play some poker.
Maybe the game will revert back to 2007 when you go back in there, and we can all enjoy a little bit of that. But no, that's phenomenal stuff, and I think that's where we always promote community, but have those folks around you, so you don't have to figure it out all yourself. You can have other people telling you, here's how the game is changing, and you can have those conversations with a group of people, and I think that's a great way to learn the game. So, well, we'll let you go here, Chad. But before we do that, how can people connect with you? They're out there listening, going, "Man, I love this guy. Who's this guy? I want to connect with him. I want to read more of his stuff." What's the best way to connect?
Well, I certainly hope there are some out there, and if they
Well,
do,
hopefully
and are,
everybody's heard of you, but in the rare case they maybe haven't.
Twitter is usually I'm very active on Twitter at Chad A Holloway, A being my middle initial. So at Chad A Holloway is probably the best social media to do it. And then of course just visit PokerNews.com. If you're not familiar with it, highly recommend it. We've got great news articles, the live updates from a lot of tournaments, both live and online, and then of course the Poker News podcast. And there is, if you're looking to improve your game, there's a whole strategy section there with lots of free content. So definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff, and the archives of articles are all available too. So go check that out. But Chad, thanks, man. It was kind of fun to have you on as number 200. That was kind of a fun turn of events. But hopefully, it won't be another 200 episodes till we have you on again.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you guys kind of letting me talk there. It's been a while since I've gotten to share some poker stories about my travels, and I certainly do appreciate the opportunity. And thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and all the best, post Mike Sexton. I know the world looks a little different through your lenses now, but best of wishes. And
I'll say this: whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's Rob or John or anybody listening, one great way I think to honor Mike Sexton is the next time you play live poker and you make the final table, do what Mike Sexton always did and always advocated for, and that's dress up a little bit. Feel good. Put on, if you don't got a suit, just put on a button up. If you look at Mike Sexton when he won his WPT title, he's got a nice looking suit on, and he was always dressed to the nines. And I've always appreciated that about Mike Sexton. So I know that if I ever make another final table, I'm definitely going to do that in honor of Mike.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, Chad. We're going to wrap up here, but you're free to go. But thanks again.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right, guys. Good stuff there from Chad Holloway. Fantastic. If you're not connected with him, connect with him. Poker News, follow it. Rob, John, what do you guys have?
Well, I've been following Chad since I got my Twitter account, I think. And it's almost, you almost feel like you know the guy because he's such a great ambassador for the game. He's been there through a lot of stuff. He's seen a lot of stuff. And I remember when he won his bracelet because it was like I was cheering him on. Now, I know he's from Wisconsin. He's probably a Packer fan and everything, but
actually, he's a Dolphin fan, so you don't need to.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's fine then. That's fine. But anyway, he was, because he's a neighboring state, so you kind of have this affinity. So I've always had an affinity to Chad, and I think he's doing a great job of, promoting the game and making it interesting for people.
Yeah, everything he said about Mike Sexton applies about equally as well to Chad. I mean, he's got the same passion to it. I've never heard a bad thing about him. He's been involved with reporting some controversial subjects in poker, and he has always handled them in a very professional manner. So I think he's just a great representative for the game.
Well, that is incredibly high praise from John there. And I think, one of the things that came up about Mike Sexton was he actually referred to him as the nicest guy in poker. And I know, John, that's sort of your moniker.
I thought that was John.
If I have to lose to someone, Mike is quite a player to lose to for that. I have no problem with that.
Right. No, right. You finish second place to Mike Sexton in anything, you're running pretty good. But maybe that does leave an opening now for officially you to become the nicest guy in poker.
Well, you never know. Actually, Chad might give me a run for my money there too.
I think so.
Well, as a fan of the game, as a fan of the industry, as somebody who's on the outside sort of tried to help poker become more mainstream and more accepted in certain elements of our world, the more good people we have in the game, the easier it is to sell that message.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Rec Poker Nation, guys. I guess the only thing I would want to add is just so many things going on. We talk about this all the time. We've got home games. We have Zoom meetings going on when we play home games. You can be on the podcast recording. We have seminars, book studies, learning with partners, strat chats, groups, forums, streaming on Twitch, all kinds of stuff going on. Frankly, it's even overwhelming for me. But that's why we have the website and that's why we have the newsletter. So If you're not a member already, you can become a free member at rec.poker, or you can sign up for the newsletter and kind of stay plugged in that way. So just a reminder that we're not giving you all of the updates on the podcast anymore. We're really relying on you to go to the website and get on the newsletter and check those things out. How about you guys?
Well, first thing, I had a couple of questions come in regarding our home game format. So I wanted to remind everyone, we have 3 different distinct series right now. We have our No Limit Hold'em series. That's played the first Wednesday of every month. And then there is a Player of the Year points race for that. And there'll be a Tournament of Champions at the end of the year in December for that league. We also have our mixed game series. That's played the second Wednesday of every month. And we're never going to play just plain No Limit Hold'em in that series. It's going to be mixed games like Horse or Badoogie or PLO or 5-card draw, all of those types of things. And then, of course, we have our nightly series. So every other night of the month, we have the nightly series tournament that you can play, and the winner of those tournaments get a bronze pin, and then there is a Tournament of Champions for all of the winners in that month the following month. So keep track of all of those, and just because you win one of them, the points don't count towards another series, but just wanted to make that clear for everyone. And of course, soon we will have our international series with the games that we're playing on Friday.
And we're not planning on doing pins for those at all, right? That's just podcast shout out. And we'll kind of see, I guess, if it grows big enough, but we want to make sure that the pins are earned through a big enough field, right?
Exactly. And of course, you don't have to be international to play that series. If you would like to play with people from Australia or people from Europe, then go ahead and, of course, if your schedule allows, sign up for those times. That's the hard thing. Podcasts are great in that it's easy to make an international, worldwide format that people can listen to and participate and share in. But when you want them all to sit down and poker player together, time zone issues make that a little bit challenging.
For sure. So jump on there at 5 a.m. I'll be on there on occasion, Friday mornings at 5 a.m. playing with our Australian friends. So jump in there if you can.
Then we did have our No Limit Hold'em series played on September 2nd, and we had Fergie 56, Kim Kilroy. She won her very first No Limit Hold'em series. Actually, her first win for Rec Poker altogether. A fantastic victory. And then,
way to go, Kim.
Absolutely. And then for our Rec Poker Nightly series, August 31st through September 6th, we had Marbles Jam, Jefferson Kupferberg. I'm sorry, I think
it's Kupferberg, but
okay, Kupferberg. That's actually easier to say too. It's his second No Limit or Nightly Series victory. September 1st, Hilly 15, Adam Hillstrom got his first Nightly Series victory and denied me of mine. I actually came in second place.
Oh, burn. Sorry, John. But you already got like 5, right?
I think not all Nightly Series, but yeah, I've got 5 wins total, but I still needed to get that Nightly Series victory so I can qualify for the Tournament of Champions next month.
True. Good point.
Anyway, September 3rd, Keck Geek 65, who is Jacob Keek, maybe? I don't know.
I'll let you have that one.
K-E, however that is pronounced. It's his second Nightly Series victory. Lefty 19, Mike B got his first. Wager 32, Ross got his first. And Mr. DZZZ 18, Richard Dietz, got his second Nightly Series victory.
Yeah, and he was telling me he had to get the second one to prove the first one credible. So he's done that now. Because, right, anybody can maybe win one, but who can win, multiple tournaments?
Absolutely.
Well, great job, John, as always. Yeah, if you guys have questions on that, when we set this whole thing up, we thought we'll do one tournament a month. And now we're basically running, 30, we'll be like 35 tournaments a month. So hopefully we're not confusing things, but it's all about trying to add and get engagement and jump on there, you guys. It's so fun. And Tuesday nights, every Tuesday night, we do a Zoom call with it. So you can jump on that deal. And then once a month for members, we do a Zoom game as well. So great stuff. Rob, you got anything, man?
Oh, not much. Just, go to the website, check it out. We've got a lot of content out there. The book study's going on. We're hopefully a couple more sessions probably in September, and we should be able to wrap up the game plan and hopefully get an opportunity to talk about it with Matt Matros. So that'll be exciting coming up.
How good has it been?
It's been awesome. It's been
Yeah.
awesome. Just check it out. I mean, you go to the website. Premium members get content to everything we've done so far, and it's like a primer for poker. It'll talk you through everything from pre-flop into the post-flop action and what goes on, and terms and how everything works. It's almost like a beginner's primer to poker. Gets you started.
I think it's been one of the best. I've never seen anything that would take a beginning player and make them competent better than this. It really teaches you about balance. The only thing it's really lacking is just understanding the reasons behind all of it, which you have to learn in order to go to the next stage or in order to make adjustments. But it gives you a really solid foundation, more solid than just about anything I've seen.
Yep, I agree.
Well,
it's been great.
And it sounds like that was sort of his goal, right? When we had him on here, it's like, I just want to write something where somebody can learn a few rules, sit down, and be competitive. So all of the theory behind it is stuff that he knows, but it sounds like mission accomplished.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, good stuff. Anything else that we missed? All right, we'll go with Direct.Poker. Sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our sponsor, Running Aces Racetrack, Casino, and Hotel. Website app, Learn Pro Poker. Thanks again to Chad Holloway. Thanks to Rob Washam, John Somsky, and all of Rec Poker Nation. And we will check in next time. Take care, everybody.